China's influence in Africa has expanded exponentially over the past 3 decades. Although American taxpayers and private philanthropists provide the most humanitarian aid to Africa, the Chinese Communist Party's stronghold there now poses a national security threat for everyone and economic and environmental hazards for Africans. Hi everyone, welcome to Lei's Real Talk. I'm Lei. From 1970 to 75, to support the spirit of Pan-African socialism, Beijing spent over $400 million to build the longest sub-Saharan railroad on the continent, the Tanzam Railroad. That's when the Chinese Communist Party first set its foot in Africa. The CCP didn't start commercial activities until the early 1990s. By the year 2000, its trade with Africa increased fivefold. That year, a Pan-Africa China-Africa Cooperation Forum was established. This forum holds a summit meeting every 3 years. At the 2018 summit, Xi Jinping announced that Beijing would spend $60 billion to provide African countries with direct investments, free aid, interest-free loans, a credit line, a special China-Africa Development Fund, and funds to support imports from Africa. This year, in 2021, China will become the country with the most direct investments in Africa. To gain political support, the Chinese Communist Party has been constructing presidential palaces and government buildings for African leaders. For example, Burundi, which ranks as the world's 5th poorest country, received a new presidential palace worth $22 million. Zimbabwe is about to get a $100 million parliament building, and Libya got a $66 million government building. African nations have returned the favor by supporting China in international affairs. In June 2020, the UN Human Rights Council held a vote on the controversial national security law that the CCP imposed on Hong Kong, but 25 African countries sided with the CCP. In October of the same year, in a UN joint statement condemning the regime's human rights violations in Xinjiang, Hong Kong, and Tibet, no African countries signed the joint statement. In addition to financial influence, China has also expanded its cultural, educational, and media platforms. In over 40 African countries, there are more than 60 Confucius institutes, which many believe are vehicles for CCP to carry out espionage and surveillance activities. In more than 30 African countries, the CCP makes direct investments in local media and trains African journalists. To influence future African elites, the CCP provides over 10,000 scholarships to African students every year. That's more scholarships than all leading Western countries combined. The CCP also offers free trips to China to key opinion leaders and holds seminars on China for African diplomats. But has the regime's effort generated positive views among Africans? Maria Repnikova of Georgia State University said that when it comes to views of China, it is necessary to distinguish between African elites and ordinary people. She said that although the African elites praise China in public, ordinary African people are more critical. Dr. Emmanuel Matambo at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa had said that in his home country of Zambia, more and more people are rejecting China's influence for fear of being colonized. He believes that there is a disharmony between what the elites want to sell and what the people feel. The way Chinese Communist Party infiltrates African societies through economic, educational, media, and cultural programs is similar to how it infiltrates Western societies. Also similar is the fact that the elites and the general public hold divergent views in regard to China. So understanding how the CCP influences Africa might help us understand how it has infiltrated our own society. According to a study released by Afrobarometer in November 2020, 32% of young Africans between the age of 18 and 35 prefer the United States and its development model. 23% chose China. The survey also found that 71% think English is the most important international language, while only 2% think Chinese is very important. Africans' rejection of China's influence stems from a few areas of concern. The French newspaper Le Monde reported in 2018 that the servers installed by Huawei at the headquarters of the African Union had been sending data to China every night for 5 years. The building was erected by the state-owned China Construction Group. An inspection by the African Union found that surveillance equipment was hidden throughout the building. According to the Heritage Foundation, Chinese companies have built or renovated at least 24 presidential or prime minister residences or offices, 26 parliament offices, 32 military or police facilities, and 19 foreign ministry buildings. Chinese telecommunication firms have built at least 14 intra-governmental telecom networks, and Beijing has gifted computers to at least 35 African governments. From building construction to telecom infrastructure to computer system installation, these projects have allowed the Chinese Communist Party to install surveillance equipment and collect intelligence directly from the highest levels of the various African governments. The Chinese regime's financial assistance to African countries often comprises loans issued in renminbi. The funds do not leave China but are directly transferred between import and export accounts. This means that the recipient country can only use this loan to purchase Chinese products and services. Another form is called buyer's credit, and although it's not limited to renminbi, it usually stipulates that Chinese equipment or services must be purchased. Some analysts have pointed out that about 60% of the loans or aids issued by the Chinese financial institutions eventually return to China's domestic enterprises. For example, infrastructure service providers Huawei and ZTE have benefited from the assistance programs and are expanding rapidly in Africa. 70% of 4G communication networks are by Huawei. Chinese companies have accounted for more than 1/3 of the African mobile phone market. The software application and electronic transactions used by Chinese banks in Africa have also increased the continent's dependency on the Chinese currency and Chinese financial systems. The vast majority of jobs created by Chinese companies in Africa are low-skilled and labor-intensive. These companies rarely transfer their technical know-how to the African workforce. This has prevented Africans from developing a complete industrial chain and becoming more self-sufficient. Consequently, it has allowed China to continue dumping large quantities of cheap consumer products into Africa. Even for China's own construction projects in Africa, Chinese companies primarily use their own workers and haven't created jobs to help the locals. For example, despite high investments from China, Zambia's youth unemployment was as high as 40% in 2019, according to Dr. Matambo. And the failure of Chinese investments to transform local economies has given rise to the people's fear of soon becoming a Chinese colony. The budget for Chinese-funded projects is usually low, sacrificing health, safety, quality, and environmental protection for the locals. For example, the safety conditions of Chinese-funded copper mines in Zambia are extremely poor, having caused casualties to workers for years. According to the Agence France-Presse, an investigation in 2019 that was conducted by a committee formed by Central African Republic officials recommended shutting down 4 Chinese-owned gold mines in the town of Bazom. The committee's report described the operation as an ecological disaster. It stated that manual excavation had killed aquatic life in the local Oham River and increased the death rate in neighboring villages. Africa is critical to the CCP because of its natural resources and huge consumer market. Several African countries are strategically important to Beijing. I will talk about them in my future videos very soon. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.